よいしょ。
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello.
to University.
Hello.
So this is course 104. So effective communication and competitive bidding strategies for business owners. So we've had a good number of last courses. Last time, ethical practice and legal compliance for business owners, where we heard a lot about both the ethical and legal side.
Recording in progress.
Which really tied into the relationship aspects of the first one and the smart financing and financial management. So this course will tie into once again, and this sort of caps the 100 level. This is now our fourth midway point of Small Business University. So we're really excited today to go. But before we get going, Stephanie, you're on here, correct?
I am on here, yes. So good afternoon, everybody. Just a few housekeeping reminders. Number one, actually, you'll notice Marisol's not with us today. Jeff is stepping in to give us a hand with hosting, but Marisol will be back next week. And so just before we start, make sure that you did change your Zoom name to your first and last name. And you can include your business name or what you do, or if you're a student in there. Click the link in the chat to complete your attendance. This is really important. I'll edit throughout the session, so you can, or you can message me in the chat and I'll share it with you. This is important for two reasons. One, it'll get your name on the wheel of names and your chance to win that e-gift card sponsored by Kaufman Lynn, but it's also going to help us with your attendance and making sure that you do get the follow-up information tomorrow. So please do be sure that you mute your microphones during the presentation so that we can hear the presenters. The presenters will have some time for Q&A throughout the presentations and again at the end of the session. And don't forget to complete that session survey when you leave the Zoom room. It's going to populate right after you click leave. Make sure you complete that. If you are working toward a certificate or a badge, that's going to help you with the requirements for that, as well as it gives us feedback to help us shape our next session. So please do be sure that you do that. Students, your reflection is the last question in that survey, and it's been updated to allot for the number of words for the minimum for your reflection. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Jeff.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Good stuff. And now, because you're not here to hear from me, let's get this thing moving forward. So the way today's going to be structured is we have the first half of the class that's going to be presented by Professor Keller, which I'm a big fan of his, and it's not just because he has a great first name. And then the second half is going to be with two pre-construction professionals, the best in the business. And I'm not just saying that because they're on here and I have to work with them, but they are great. And they are going to talk about how, for those in the construction or even not, how to be effective communication, especially when it involves price components and giving numbers, because things that are just black and white are not always black and white, and there are some ways to make yourself more effective. So I saw Professor Keller, and he just jumped off my screen. So are you still here?
Yep, I'm still here.
All right, then I guess it just shuffled because it moved there. So with that, Professor Keller is professor at Palm Beach State College, over 25 years consulting. He is an expert, so we all can learn from him. I will be looking in the chat as well as Stephanie, so we will let you know. Occasionally we'll break in if there's certain questions or comments, and we'll be ready to learn. So with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. So a little introduction just for myself. Like Jeff had said, I've been consulting and working in industry for 25 years, like construction. I saw that we do have some viewers here on and learners that are from the sign industry. I've worked in architectural signage, but I've worked in a variety of different disciplines, different industries. So I have a wide array of experience when it comes to teaching others about how to communicate so that you can have great relationships and have great communication. So let me bring up my presentation here so that we can all benefit from this. So let me get this started here out of the way. Ooh, let me drag these out of the way. All right. Slideshow and from the beginning. Okay, so let me bring this up. So let me start off with this. I like to always start off with, and a lot of people kind of say that this is a little cliche to start off with jokes and things like that, but I like to start off with jokes because it kind of eases the tension a little bit here. So does everybody want to hear a joke about construction? Well, you can't. I'm still working on it. So there you go. That's my joke for the day. I love sharing some of these fun dad jokes. I'm a father myself, and the students that I greet come from all different age ranges. So we always have a fun laugh at the jokes that I tell. All right, so what I'm talking about today is effective communication for business success. So when it comes to this, all right, there's a lot of facets that come along with business success and communication. So let's kind of go through with what we're going to talk about here in my portion of today's learning. First, we're going to start off with some communication fundamentals. So I want to make sure that everybody has a good foundation when it comes to the things that go into communication. We're going to also talk about building trust and long-term client relationships. The old cliche that when all else is even, people would rather do business with their friends is completely true. So coming up with great relationships and developing that trust and long-term agreements will really be beneficial for sales in the long run. I want you to also understand how to present your business with a lot of confidence, because the more confidence that you present, the more confidence that your potential clients are going to have in you when they see this, being presented to them. And then also we're going to go through some basics about how to negotiate on value and with respect. We're not going to get really, really deep into negotiations because that could be an entire course all on its own. But I do want you to walk away with some basic strategies so that you can do well. All right, so let's start off with communication fundamentals. All right, so first of all, why is it that you need to be a good communicator? So first of all, you need to have the ability to communicate effectively, all right, so that you have a lasting impact on the team that's going to actually make the decision about your bid, about your proposal. So you want to be able to communicate with them in a way that they're going to be receptive. I like to tell a lot of learners, I like to say, you wouldn't go to Japan and speak Hebrew because they wouldn't understand you. So communication is multifaceted. You have to really embrace different ways of communicating on the recipient's level, not your best preferred way. You need to learn what their preferred way is and communicate the way that they want you to communicate. You need to leave an impression with how you speak, your mannerisms, accuracy of what you write, and whether you show respect for who you're communicating with. Right? Even if you're sitting across the table from someone who you might have zero in common with, and you believe that this person shouldn't be evaluating your proposal, you still need to communicate with that utmost respect in order to gain the relationship and really move forward with your proposal and your presentation. Now, bids are lost by not showing that urgency with your responses, presenting yourself and your business, all right, as being inflexible or lacking clarity in your communication, both verbal and written, all right? So a lot of us get into doing this communication. We don't realize that it's not just what you write, it's how often you write and when you write it, all right? Sending, response emails at 10 o'clock at night, generally speaking, you're responding, but it's probably not going to be seen by the person that you're sending it to until the following business day. So understanding that you need to be urgent with your communications as well, that becomes important. So what are the types of professional communication? All right. So number one, verbal and communication. So effective verbal communication needs to be quick. It needs to be clear. You need to be respectful of your client's time. All right. So too many times we get very long-winded with what we're talking about because we're so passionate about making this sale or developing this relationship that we go on and on and on and on. We need to cut it off. We need to present exactly what it is that we need to present. Move on. We need to have good nonverbal communication. How many of us have ever seen that person standing in the back of the room with their arms folded in front of them and they're very closed off? That sends this message that you're just not very receptive to whatever somebody is saying to you. So you have to be aware of those things. You have to be aware of your facial expressions, your hand gestures, your posture. All right. You need to be able to present yourself so that they have confidence, the client has confidence in what you're saying. Your written communications, they need to be it's not just your words, but is it, punctuated correctly? Are you using good grammar? Are you capitalizing things? Are you doing things the right way? Are you writing an email and it's just one long paragraph? It needs to be broken up because when you break it up, you have different emphasis. Your visual communication. So presenting complex information in an understandable way using graphs or diagrams, visuals, different things that allow you to communicate exactly what you mean, but in a different way. Again, you're communicating so that the recipient is understanding what you're saying better. And then the last one that many of us forget, our listening communication. Now, active listening can be the hardest, but you have to pause. The hardest thing to do is to make a particular proposal and then just be quiet and listen for the feedback and the responses that you're going to get. Because if you don't, you're going to end up over talking an individual and not hearing all the important things that you could use in order for you to get the sale. Now, there are 5 good things that come along with communication. 5 things that you need to check off on. All right. Now, yeah, there are some other things, some other subtleties that go along with this, but these are the 5 main ones. Definitely mandatory. You got to be clear with what you're communicating. Clarity of message is incredibly important. All right. You need to make sure that you are, hold on a second here, let me kind of do this so that I can actually emphasize some of this. You need to avoid jargon, all right? You don't want to have any kind of confusion. I can give you a case in point, all right? I was sitting and talking with someone here at the college, and I used the acronym that is used in public school systems a lot, IEP. And the individuals that I was having conversation with had no idea what an IEP was. I had to backtrack and explain what an IEP was. Now they understood. But you gotta avoid those things, right? You've got to be able to spell it out so that they understand. You got to be concise, all right? Brevity is very, very important, all right? You need to avoid unnecessary details, all right, unless they ask. A client is going to ask you if they want more details. You need to give the important things and then move on to the next piece, right? If they don't understand or they need an additional detail to it, they will ask, all right? You need to be complete, all right? And make sure that you have all the necessary information presented, all right, and communicated. Otherwise, you're going to have misinterpretations, all right? And it all needs to be communicated in a very coherent way. Last but not least, number 5, you have to show courtesy, all right? And this is perhaps the most important thing because this is what really develops those long-term relationships. This is what develops that kind of rapport, which is going to be our next step here, what we're going to talk about next. developing that kind of relationship that gets you repeat business. You need to be respectful, you need to be polite, you need to be mindful of another person's time. So when you sit down and you have this kind of communications, right, you need to understand how much time do they really have available. When you send emails, make sure that your emails are brief and to the point. You don't want this super long email that they have to read through this entirely long thing, and they tune you out, right? So you need to make sure that you show them courtesy because they're busy too. All right, so now that we went through those basics, those fundamentals of communication, are there any questions? Anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
I actually have a question,
Sure.
Professor Keller. This is Stephanie Pechtel.
Okay.
So one of the big things right now, and this may open up, a whole nother discussion, but one of the big things right now is using AI
Mhm.
as your platform for writing things and drafting communications. Is that something that's recommended for business owners to utilize?
Yes, I mean, AI can be incredibly helpful. AI can help you start off something that can be very good as far as the communication goes. But you have to remember that AI is not going to write like you. And AI is a computer, right? So AI is going to generate important factual information, but it's not going to communicate like you communicate. So when you use like ChatGPT, you can use ChatGPT to give you that basic framework. But then you need to take that basic framework and you need to adjust it. And here's why, right? I want you to understand this, all of you here that are listening to this. If you use AI to write something, whether it be an email, a proposal, a pitch, all right, the last thing you want to do is to use that and you have it write everything for you. Then you go into a face-to-face meeting and you don't know what you wrote because AI wrote it for you. And you don't have the ability to actually communicate. One of the things that college professors are using now, because it's very hard to combat AI and its writing for students in classes, is that we're evoking a two-prong kind of writing assignment where, okay, we're not going to police you. We're not going to, survey everything that you wrote to see if what you turned in online is written by ChatGPT. However, the next time that you come to class, you're going to sit down and take what it is that you wrote and you're going to have to expand on it in an original and a critically thought-provoking way. Now you need to know what it is that you wrote. Same sort of thing goes for proposals and goes for sales. You better know your business and you better know what you wrote. If you had AI write something completely for you, you're not going to know it. Okay? Hopefully that clears it up very well.
Perfect. So it's a thinking partner, but it shouldn't be doing all of the work for
It should not do all the work.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other
I put
questions?
something in chat that I read today. It was from a professor. I said, AI always hallucinates. I get it because I use AI a lot of like agentic as well. And honestly, AI, all it does is come up and fabricate information. It's up to the user to proofread it.
Yes, very much so. And in a lot of cases, AI will curate off of the internet. And it is constantly getting better, but it'll curate things, and sometimes it makes mistakes. And it'll curate something that is not exactly applicable to you and your business, or it'll curate something that's entirely wrong. And because it's curating from across the entire internet, and it may come across something that is misinformation, and it utilizes that to write what it's writing.
And there is one question there in
Okay.
the chat from Ivan. I have difficulty when presenting a proposal with someone else who doesn't know how to stop talking or continually leads with less important details. Aside from having a conversation with that individual, how can you pivot on the spot to meet those 5 C's without overtly shutting them up?
Oh, okay. So you've got a person that likes to hear themselves talk. And that's important. If it's part of your team that is continually talking like that, and you want to segue, you need to have that conversation prior to going in and making a proposal. If you're sitting across with a client who wants to keep on talking, all right, now you need to realize that, okay, the client wants to communicate with you, all right? And you need to actively listen to what they're saying, right? So that you can actually use what they're saying to segue into more of your proposal. It's a tough conversation to have with teammates sometimes, because teammates sometimes will take it offensively. But it is a conversation, a difficult conversation that you need to have with your teammate. If I'm understanding the question correctly.
Ivan, does that help with your question? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a hard conversation, Ivan, and I think that you're not unusual. There are a lot of sales individuals like to go on and on and on and on and on. They like to talk. The hardest thing to teach a salesperson is when to shut up and be quiet. And that's because salespeople don't like dead air. So, all right, so let's move on to the next section here. All right, so the next section is about building trust and long-term client relationships. Now, building trust is about being effective, efficient, and reliable. It's about being of value, all right? But being the right kind of value. So value is a very simple thing that can be really, really difficult to determine. All right, so value, equals what benefits you're providing divided by what costs that you're incurring for them. Okay? Now, that seems kind of simple to yourself, right? But benefits can be a lot of different things, right? So benefits can be, what's the price? Benefits can be, how fast are you going to produce it, right? So benefits can be broken down into two things, all right? So benefits can be broken down into what your client is going to gain plus what your client is going to avoid losing. So those are your two benefits. Those are the two things that go into benefits. Now costs, all right? Costs are how much money is it, all right? As well as what is the cost of the client, for the client, to do business with you? How difficult is it? So I like to use this because everybody kind of understands this. I like to use the analogy of the gym business, the health club business. All right. So health club business is really, it's very dynamic. All right. And most people don't, understand how much goes into providing value. Right. So most people, most gyms think all they're doing is selling keys to the door. Right. You're selling a membership, and if you come, you come. You don't, you don't. Right. That's not what you're selling. You need to figure out what it is that is going to be of benefit to them. You are also needing to figure out what it is that they're going to avoid losing. But when it comes to costs, gyms rush to offer the cheapest membership out there, right? But there are a lot of things that go into it that are other costs. How big is the parking lot, right? Can your members find a parking space whenever they come? Ease of doing business. What are your hours of operation? How much are you open? Right? These are all different things that go along with how easy is it to do business. It's a cost, right? So value is all about benefits divided by cost. Now, being effective when it comes to this, right, is quite simply, just achieving the goal, right? So are you providing the quality, the quantity, and being on time like the client wants? The next thing, being efficient, has to do with you using your resources the best possible. The number one resource being time, right? So are you producing the goal there in a timely fashion? And then are you reliable? And reliability is more than just delivering on the contract consistently, right? It's being available anytime the client wants to engage. Now, some clients, they want to sign the contract. They just want you to deliver what you want to deliver. There are other clients that want to call you or email you every single day, right, until the product is delivered, all right? You need to be available, all right, to and reliable on responding and engaging with them, right? Whether that's in person, whether that's over the phone when they call, whether it's through text, or whether it's through an email. You need to make sure that you're going to communicate with them. All right, so when you're first starting off, right, how are you going to get your foot in the door? How are you going to establish some sort of credibility in order to get this moving, right? So there are 4 types of credibility here, right? And this is what gets you through the process of gaining a contract and then gaining repeat business. So there's presumed credibility, right? So presumed credibility has to do with the initial perception of a client, all right, that they have of your company, right? This happens before your business ever even does anything in the bid process, right? This could be meeting a potential client at a networking function, right? This could be meeting a client at an expo. It's how you are, kind of coming across. Now, number 2, reputed credibility has to do with word of mouth. It's your reviews, your testimonials, your referrals. How do people talk about you? Do you have past clients that are actually making referrals of your business to another business? Hey, this is the person that you need to talk to. This is the business that you need to talk to. I had my refrigerator go down 2 days ago at my house, and I needed somebody to come out and take a look at it. I had a whole refrigerator full of food, right? I'm standing to lose all hundreds of dollars worth of food that's in my refrigerator. So I need somebody to come out quickly. Hey, I tapped into a couple people, and they said, this is the guy that you need to call, right? I called this person, boom, done. He was out in 2 hours. So, those sorts of things, all right, are important when it comes to your reputation. Surface credibility has to do with what you're using. We commonly think of it as basic marketing and branding, right? So it's the initial impression that they clients possibly have of your online presence, or the marketing materials that you provide, your social media, your different things. Is it clear? Is it concise? Is it very apparent what you do, right? And it's not convoluted. Final, number 4, that's your earned credibility. That's you going in, delivering on what you promised, following through on the contracts, not being disagreeable, right? And demonstrating that you have the expertise to get this done in a variety of different circumstances. And, there is, hey, just give me a chance. I'll show you that I'm worth it. That's what you're doing when you're showing you're worth it. You're earning that credibility. Okay? Now, building rapport, all right? So what does rapport mean? All right? Well, it's just a close, harmonious relationship with other people, right? And so that everybody understands, their feelings, their ideas, where they're coming from on stuff. All right. So, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, when all else is even, people would rather do business with their friends or people that they have good rapport with than not. All right. So, what are the 4 things that a client is looking for when it comes to this? All right. Number 1, all right, they want to know that you have a perceived difference from your competitors in your product and service. All right. Now, they need to understand that. And why? Why is it that you are different? So that they can actually identify with that. They can understand, okay, you might not be the cheapest guy in town, but every single time you deliver early, right? You come in you're known for coming in under budget, right? You're doing it and nobody even knows you're there, that you're doing it. These are different things that differentiate you from your competitors. Right? Number 2, all right, you're a better value for your product or service than your competitor. Notice that I did not say that you were cheaper. You were providing better value. Okay? Everybody's heard that old saying, right? You can have 3 things. It can either be good, or it can be cheap, or it can be on time. You can only have 2 of the 3. It can be good and cheap, but it's not going to be fast, right? It can be good or fast, but it ain't going to be cheap, all right? So you understand, right? How are you going to be different and a better of value? So you may be a little bit more expensive, but again, you're delivering on all these things that are important to a client that make you the better choice. You reduce the risk of awarding the contract. That's number 3, right? So one of the worst things for a client is actually talking to potential bidders, and they're brand new. You don't know whether they're going to be able to deliver on what they're saying. If you aren't assured of that, there's a risk involved, right? Are you going to follow through? Is it going to be of the quality that you're promising? Is it going to be on time, right? If you have a way to reduce that risk, creates great rapport. And then obviously lowest price, right? Sometimes that's what it is, all right? Sometimes clients, all they want is the cheapest one, right? You need to understand, are you that person, or are you that company, or not? Because it's important to understand. All of this, all right, requires active listening. There is a 70-30 rule. 30% of the time you should be talking, 70% of the time you should be listening. You should be listening twice as much as talking. So the more you listen, the more you can learn about a particular business and how you can be of value. All right, so let's open this up for a couple more questions.
So we did have a question from Catalina. She said, even the quality/ease of website process or consultation sign-up accounts for credibility, right? So Catalina, do you want to reference what you were speaking about there in your question?
Yeah, I was saying when you were discussing the credibility, the presumed credibility, how easy it is to get in touch with you, your website in general. That also accounts it's important for your overall credibility and the way that the customer or client perceives your business and how much they're willing to pay in exchange. Like if they see it's nice and put together, they're more likely to trust you, and you seem more valuable as well.
Yes. Now this goes right along with access costs. All right. So we call these access costs. All right. Access costs, all right, are how difficult is it to do business with you. So if you this is why you go to websites now, all right, and they've done away with these long forms that you got to fill out in order to get their free ebook. right? So you go in and all they ask you for is your name and an email. That's it. That's all they're asking for, right? Because now if they've got access, they can get that information later as they develop the relationship, right? They're making it easy to do business with them, right? Same sort of thing with having a very professional website. You can look at a website and make that website look like really nice, right? It can be all these great photos and great images. You can have a rotating banner and all this other stuff. But if the menus are set up terrible and the navigation going from one place to another on the website is difficult for clients will give up. They're like, forget this. I'll move on to somebody who is easier for me to do business with, right?
Yeah, that makes sense, especially when the websites on laptop don't convert properly to like a phone. I find it sometimes frustrating when I'm on websites and it's taking too long to load or I can't hit certain buttons. I just leave.
Yes, very much so.
Thank you.
So when you look at this, right, and you look at your construction, you need to look at business. Like if you're a small business, if you're, 1, 2, 3 person show, you need to be able to set up a particular business and a website, utilizing some of the services that are out there that automatically convert your website to mobile formats, right? That's what they call it, mobile format. And so that you set it up as a website for your computer, but the back end, the platform itself, will actually convert it so it looks right on a phone.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have one more question from Fernando. Where can we find the right person or company to do business with ethics and credibility? That's the $1 million question.
Okay. There's a long answer and there's a short answer. All right. So the short answer is you can't control what other people do. You can only control what you do. And, you have to understand that ethics isn't something that's a sometime thing. It's an all of the time thing. It's about what you do when nobody's looking, not what you do when everybody's watching. So the more that you're ethical, the better off you're going to be for yourself. I will say this from an experiential, vantage point for me. The more ethical I am, the easier it is for me to recognize ethical clients, because automatically I hear in the communication. Let's go back to the active listening. Listening when you are having communications with potential clients, not just for what they say, but what they don't say as well. Because if you spend more time listening, often clients will actually tell you, all right, the things that you want to know, whether willingly or, just unconsciously tell you exactly what it is that you need to know. But you have to be prepared to listen. Active listening is a skill. You have to practice it. You have to practice keeping your mouth shut. I hope that helped a little bit, Fernando. Ethics is a very difficult thing.
I have a loaded question for you. I don't want to cut Fernando off. So I'm actually remembering a poster I used to see at work. What's better, business ethics or real ethics? And there was a poster at work that had people with a suit with dollar bills coming out of their sleeve, and it's like business ethics when real ethics won't matter. And I'm like, it always irked me.
Well, yeah. Real ethics. All right. So here's the thing. We open our businesses and we go into business to essentially fund our lives, right? What is money, right? Money isn't, now we're getting a little bit philosophical here, right? Money isn't anything but paper, right? It's just numbers that are on a digital account, right? It's what money actually does for you, all right? And that money funnels to your personal life, right? If you own your own business, doing business ethically, right, in a positive, principled way, makes you feel good about the way that you did it, right? And that carries over into your personal life. And ultimately, this is all about personal. This is what, whether it's your company or whether you're working in a company, it's all about how this is going to transition for you personally, how you are going to be able to take care of your family, how are you going to, grow personally. And so when it comes back to your question, business ethics or real ethics, 100% real ethics. But really, there's no difference between the two. All right. Your business ethics should be your real ethics.
Thank you. That was the answer I was looking for.
Yep. So that's company culture, right? We could spend an entire 2 hours. We could spend a whole semester talking about culture. All right, so let's move on to the next section here. All right, so the next section would be presenting your business with confidence. How are you going to present it to a potential client out there? All right, so presenting comes in a lot of different pieces. All right, so presenting your business begins well before you submit a contract. Right, it's your website, like Catalina had said earlier. Right, it's social media, it's your reputation, it's your initial communication. How are you actually reaching out to a potential client? So, like it or not, all right, your bid can be eliminated even before you get a chance to submit it. Why? Because your business is always on stage. Right? Let me be 100% clear. Word gets around. All right? If you think that this is just this big, kind of world, no, it's real tight. You're nowhere near avoiding, a bad reputation. So you got to remember, your business is always on stage. You always have to present yourself in a very agreeable kind of way, so that, hey, you got that potential, so that the bids don't even get eliminated right at the very beginning. So how do you structure your bid, all right, and your sales pitch, all right? And so very first thing, all right, make sure, be 100% sure you have all of the paperwork and that you know all of the deadlines, all right? So this is a very simple thing that so many people overlook, all right? So you've got to make sure you don't want to be going back and asking, oh, I didn't get this, form, or I didn't know that this was due on this deadline, because it makes you look unprofessional. The risk of doing business with you just went up. Now, if possible, before you submit a bid, you're going to want to try and meet with someone who's responsible for accepting the bids. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the decision maker, right? It can be the gatekeeper. It could be somebody who's just accepting the bid, because often those people will know a good bit about what needs to be submitted. Hey, ask these questions. Has the bid been posted previously? Because if it's been posted previously and now it's being reposted, why? Big why? All right. You want to know, okay, did they accept a contract on somebody and that they fell through? Why did they fall through? What is it that they couldn't do? Was this bid bid so cheaply that they just weren't able to do anything? Right? Is there a tight budget, or is there a tight timeline? Right? You want to know these things because it's going to affect what your proposal is going to be. Now, the next group that they're going to come in when they talk to you about how to actually structure these numbers, they're going to talk more about timeline and budgets. All right. You're going to need to also know, is there any special limitations? All right. Say this is a bid out on the island here in Palm Beach. All of us know, anybody who's in construction or renovations and things like that, no, there's a very, very specific time that you can actually go and do any kind of work out there on the island, per codes and ordinances that are out there on the island. So you need to understand, are there specific times, special limitations that are going to go along with this proposal? Right? You want to know that on the upfront before you submit something. Now remember, you do not want to promise something you cannot deliver. trust and reliability wins you repeat business every single time, right? It is going to get you because that's part of rapport. So you need to take and reverse engineer your budget and timeline based on what your business's resources are and your limitations, all right? Use your costs to generate a bid so you don't bid too low. Because if you bid too low, you don't want it. We don't go into business to lose money, all right? So don't go in and bid something too low just to get the business, and now it's a loss, right? Use your expected labor to generate your timelines. Don't say that you're going to be able to do this in a week when it's not going to happen because you've got half of your labor force out on vacation. Doesn't work. Now, when you deliver your sales pitch, all right, this is where salesmanship kind of comes in. Number one, research your client, know who you're talking to, understand their pain points, right? What is it that's most important to them? What do you need to emphasize when you're actually making this pitch? Is it time that's more important, or is it price, right? Or is it something else, right? So, if you're going in and you're understanding right away, okay, they just want something that's rock bottom. Well, okay, it's going to take me a year to do it. I can do it for that price, but it's going to take me a while. You need to speak about value, right? And how you would bring your value to this bid contract if you get it, all right? Stress how you solve those pain points. Maybe the client has difficulty with getting people to do things timely. You need to make sure that you understand that so you can emphasize that, right? Know who your competitors are. Know how to differentiate yourself. You can call to attention to it and say, hey, I know that I have some competitors. You don't have to name them by names. I know some competitors will come in here and tell you they can do it cheaper, but they can't do it on time. Or they're going to provide you with a product that is just not what you want. You need to provide supporting proof, whether that's proof in actual numbers or, providing testimonials from past clients. Emphasize the projects and how you excelled, how you provided more value than was expected. And here's the kicker, all right? End whatever you present with a question. Psychologically, people don't like leaving a question unanswered, right? And I do this with emails all the time. I do these with emails with my students in college, all right? I end up all my emails and I'll write in something, and then I'll end it, sound fair, ? Why? Because that 9 times out of 10, a reader is going to read that and they're going to feel compelled to answer it, and they're going to send me an answer back, okay? Same sort of thing with your communications in your sales pitch and with a question, right? And after you ask, all right, are there any more questions? Don't leave it there, all right? If they say to you that there are no more questions, ask them. Say, okay, if there's no more questions, is there anything that's preventing me from doing business with you? Is there anything that's preventing you from choosing me to do the business? Always ask for the sale. I know that sounds kind of, corny, but yeah, ask for the sale, right? They'll tell you what the next steps in the process are going to be, right? They'll tell you, no, we got to kind of sit down and talk about it. I'm like, okay, well, hey, if you talk about it a little bit more, and my stuff fits the bill, all right, can I have a chance to, tell you some different things if you think that you might be going with somebody else? Always get this question. Really show that you're very eager to get the business, okay? All right, any quick, I know this is going to open up some questions here. Any questions on this?
Let's say you have a CEO and you want to ask them effectively why all their technical staff left, but they still have a product and how they can get into it. What would be the best way? Obviously, I have a problem right now. I need to figure out how to start the conversation again.
Okay. So you want to ask a CEO whether or not you can actually provide a service or product to them, right? You want to get through the door and get a chance to actually pitch. Am I correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, you know, understand, do a little bit of research on what the actual company is doing in, in the industry and in the community right now. One of the great ways to kind of knock on the door, so to speak, is see if the business has any community charitable involvement, right? Look and see if they've done an event or made a donation or done something in the news, right? And then you can send an email or make a phone call. That's even better, all right? And get on the phone and say, hey, I saw that you did so and so. I thought that was great. Is there any way I could hear more about it? And once you get them talking about that, you can actually start to develop that kind of relationship again. That'll give you an opportunity to make that sales pitch, right?
So don't focus on the problem, but try to go human again.
What's that?
Sorry, I said don't focus on the problem. Try to be human again.
Yes. Like I said earlier on, when in doubt, people want to do business with their friends and who they have a good rapport with above anything else. All right. So, making sure that you actually have this ongoing relationship. One of the great things, and I see so little people actually do it, and it's just a wonderful thing if you're a national or international business. LinkedIn. And if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you should definitely build one, a professional one, and a company profile as well. But all of your contacts have birthdays, right? And you get a notification on there when any of your contacts are having a birthday, right? I personally, every morning when I see, hey, it's so and so's birthday, I have over 10,000 contacts, right? So it's nowhere near possible for me to actually remember every single person that I have contact with. But I've been on LinkedIn since 2007. So I have all these individuals. I always send them a happy birthday. All right. I make it like they're long lost friends. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't say it's 9 times out of 10, but it's probably like 7 out of 10. I will get a response back. Thank you, Jeffrey, for wishing me a happy birthday. It just keeps an ongoing relationship going. Okay? So people want humanism, all right, especially in the environment that's out there right now. There's so much ugliness out there in this world. People just want a friendly face, a friendly voice. So develop that relationship, get that going again, then you'll get an opportunity to make a pitch.
All right. I do have a question from Bill Kennedy. What if the organization, city, county, etc., always selects the lowest bidder or the lowest price? How do you deal with that, especially if you have a great product and do great work at a reasonable price?
Okay, so there's 2 answers to this. All right. 1, you don't want their business. So you got to remember that you went into business to be profitable, to make money yourself. All right. Not to make other people rich, other businesses and other organizations rich. You want your business to be profitable. Right. If you look at a particular bid, right, and you have a particular RFP that's out there, and you want to understand more about what they're actually looking for, develop those inside relationships. Really work on understanding who those individuals are that are going to actually put your proposals in front of the decision makers, right? Because you don't want to get eliminated before you have a chance to actually present anything. Secondly, when it comes down to it, all right, in the end, it becomes a competition. All right, you want to be competitive with, your competitors. You want to, you don't want to be unethical about things, and you don't want to be malicious and stuff like that. But hey, you need to differentiate yourself. If you can do it more professionally, there you go. If you produce a better quality product, right? Is it going to last longer? What pain point is it going to solve for a particular city? Now, in city contracts, because they're spending taxpayers' money, they're always going to be cost conscious on things, right? So but it's not always that they're going to go with the cheaper provider, right? So you need to understand, how is it that you're going to justify your additional expense, right? And how is it going to be meaningful? Are you going to present this through other projects that you've completed? In talking to, here's a suggestion: talk to some of those individuals that are the decision makers normally for these contracts, and maybe invite one of those decision makers out on one of your current projects so they can see that touching, feeling a product is so much more impactful than you just talking about it. So, inviting those individuals to see different projects and what you're doing before you're actually making these proposals can lay the foundation for you so that it goes a whole lot smoother. You have a lot better opportunity. Does that kind of help you out a little bit, Mr. Kennedy?
He said yes in the chat, so
Okay.
all good.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to this last little bit. All right, so negotiations. All right. Now, first and foremost, all right, this is kind of one of those insider tricks here. All right. Know that if you're getting contacted after you made a proposal, all right, presentation, the client is really interested. All right. You just got to figure out what it is that's making them hesitant. All right. So you got to go and figure out what the objection is. All right. Find out what the client is really, really happy about so that you can really emphasize those things. Right. But also find out what their objection is. Right. And be prepared when you come back to having a conversation with them, how overcoming this client's concern is going to affect your original bid, your original proposal. All right. So how are you going to handle changes? Now, you might look at it and say, oh, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet and I'm going to give you the same, proposal, but I'm going to meet whatever objection it is, and I'm going to do that. It'll give me the business, and I'm happy with those sorts of things. Now, this is all called what we call ZOPA, all right, or zone of possible agreement, all right. And generally speaking, all right, when a client calls you back, your range that you're looking for, all right, and their range, what they're looking for, it overlaps somewhere. It becomes important to figure out where they overlap, right? Price, timelines, limitations, different things that go along with that. Figuring out where you overlap so that you can get the best agreement possible, all right? You need to kind of avoid this whole win-lose kind of perspective. You need to try and figure out what's the win-win for us, right? Now, you are not going to get a call back if there is what we call a negative ZOPA, or a negative zone of possible agreement. That means there's no overlap, all right? That means that what you're willing to do and what they're willing to do, there's no overlap. So if you're getting a call back, there's an overlap. And you can actually work through it. You just need to figure it out. You have to ask more questions, and you have to listen, spend time listening to what they're telling you, right? When you do go into this, right, you also have to have what we call a BATNA, or a best alternative to no agreement, right? So You need to walk in and say, okay, how am I going to, work this out? Now, in certain very, very large corporations, they bring like a third party, and sometimes you get this 3D negotiations going on. You'll get like a third thing in that third organization. And so what can I do here that's going to make you want to do this to give this? And so now you get these multiple things going on. All right. So you need to manage your emotions and not get frustrated, right? Really, you got to kind of work through it. It's not personal. You need to focus on the values and the positives that you bring in your proposal, all right, and how it compares with all of the competitors. And you need to calmly discuss, how is it going to change things? Oh yeah, I can do that. I can meet that kind of thing that you want, but I'm not exactly going to be able to do it for this price. It's going to affect the price. And, you need to be perfectly honest with them. You need to say, hey, look, I can't give you that exact price right now, but I can give you that price in 24 hours. I need to sit down and break it down and give you that exact, because you want to deliver on something that you want to give them something that you can deliver on. You don't want to promise something that you can't, because nothing is worse than failing on what you promised. Important tips for negotiations, right? Change orders. You need to specifically outline the process, right, and the timeline for changes to the contract, all right? So after you've signed that contract, you need to have built into that, this is what's going to be, what's going to come along if the client requests a change, right? It's okay, things happen, right? But you gotta have something in place for that change orders, right? You need to take your time, right? Remember, again, you have already made that presentation, right? They're happy. They liked your presentation. That's why you got a call back, all right? And it's just this one or two issues or something like that. You need to make sure you can do what the client is asking. So take your time. Confirm that you understand exactly what it is that they want and that they understand what you can do. And then put it in writing, all right? So whatever it is that's discussed, update your proposal, send it. I will send it back to you as soon as I get to my desk in my office. I'll send you a proposal, written updated proposal, so that you can have it and you can approve it. Does it sound good? All right, great. Final thing that you need to understand: you need to know when to walk away. Sometimes, as a business, you can't meet the needs of a client. All right, and it's better to turn down that contract than to take one and fail, or take one and lose money on it. Sometimes a lot of money on it. You don't want to lose money, because that's a recipe for your business going out of business, and that's no good at all. All right. So, any questions on the negotiations?
Yeah, and then, not to be pushy, but we are going to be wrapping up this first part of the session very soon, and move on to the second part.
Yep.
I'm loving this. Let's say you want to go pro bono. How do you keep it from costing you at the end of the day? Like keeping the company covering the expenses and stuff.
If you're going to do something pro bono, all right, you have to understand. You need to take into account, and we're going to make this really quick. You need to when you're doing something pro bono, look at it from all different angles. All right, look at it what you're going to get out of it, not just money. Right? What kind of publicity are you going to get out of it? What kind
I'll be honest. I'm doing this to actually not have to advertise.
Okay, there you go. All right, so you're doing it to not advertise, which is a fantastic thing. All right, so you're developing a brand. All right, you're developing a reputation of, okay, I'm the go-to person. All right, but you also want to look at it from in a financial perspective, right? Doing things pro bono, depending on who it is that you're doing pro bono for, all right? Sometimes that can be a tax advantage for you, right? So you need to look at it at all angles, all right? And sit down and say, okay, this is what I'm getting out of it, not just a check, all right? I'm not just getting money, right? So when you do it that way, obviously speaking, you need to have very tight controls over the particular project that you're doing. You need to minimize the amount of cost that gets put into it, right? That doesn't mean do it cheap. It just means you want to keep that really tight and under control, right? And that's where a really good project manager comes in, right? Or yourself being, really, astute in project management to keep it under control. Really detailed Gantt charts, really focusing on, keeping these timelines tight, and really being present for the project all the time.
Keep in mind, also pro bono, there's sort of different levels. So there's free services, completely free, and then there is covering your costs. So be clear up front what the level and expectations are, because then that can alleviate discussions before. Because if it's one where it's, hey, I'm going to donate my fee, there's no profit in this, so whatever it costs me, that's what it's going to cost you, is one thing. And then know that's a conversation with them to make sure they understand what those cost ramifications are if they decide to make changes or ask for additional services. The other way, if you're donating all your services, not just your profit, but also, the cost, have that conversation up front with them. So that way, if there are changes or additional things, it's an easy discussion to have, saying, hey, I know we talked about, I'm not charging you for this, but we have these changes are going on and they're adding a lot of costs to me. So can we discuss or work out, what changes need to be implemented and how are we going to do that? So communication tends to solve all issues, to tie this back into other previous ones, and to also go back to a previous that bad news doesn't get better over time. If there is a potential of bad news, such as cost impacts to you or them, have that conversation up front. And if there's, the only time that tends to backfire, not this strategy, but tends to backfire, if you don't have that conversation and there's a different expectation level on the level of service they're getting, whether that's free or paid for. So with that, Professor Keller, want to thank you for your involvement and really good value. I learned a lot. The class, a lot of comments in there about learning and very clear and engaging. So on behalf of everyone at the School District Palm Beach State College, as well as Kaufman Lane Construction, we appreciate you being involved in Small Business University.
You're very, very welcome. It was my honor to be a part of this, and I hope that the community and everybody who's here learned a little bit about communication, and I'm always available and can be tapped into at Palm Beach State College anytime.
Appreciate that. So Stephanie, if we can sort of unhighlight Professor Keller, and let's bring in Emily and Daryl for the next session. Emily and Daryl are pre-construction leaders with Kaufman Lane Construction, and they are constantly engaged both with small businesses, for those who do work in construction, the subcontractors, they're the ones that are directly involved, and they are involved in communicating with the owner. So this is really getting sort of a glimpse on both sides. So I see Daryl. I know Emily's on because she's sharing this.
I'm on.
I just saw her and then she went somewhere else. So I'm trying to locate her again.
Too many people.
And I'm the last
Wonderful.
one. Stephanie's the glue that keeps this whole course together. So, Stephanie.
Oh, there you are. Okay. I got you now. There we go.
There we go. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daryl and Emily, and the floor is yours.
All right, and everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
All right.
Good.
So we're continuing in this class. Professor Keller, thank you so much that was really wonderful information and presented very well on the effective communication. So we're going to move into the competitive bidding strategies for business owners in this section with Daryl and I. So we'll
Which
be going
does,
over.
before you get going, which does talk directly to the question that had to deal with low price and communication. So you had your answer, your question in the first part. Now we have a whole section to help try to answer that.
Yes. I did jot down a couple of questions that were asked, I think, in the chat, and some others that I'll provide some additional information on as well. But certainly speak up, and there'll be some times for you to ask some more questions too. So this is estimating and bidding to win contracts. And so you've got myself and Daryl from Kaufman Lynn Construction. We'll be going over this with you. So the first part is going to be smart estimating for small business sustainability. This is accurately estimating cost to stay profitable. There's a couple of different sections that we will go over in here is materials, labor and cost, and overhead, fee, and profit. Within the materials, there's a couple of different things that you want to take into account in addition to your normal costs that you would have, one of which is long lead time items. As we well know, there are various times within our industry where there are some materials that are long lead time items, and sometimes those can not only affect your schedule, but your possible cost. It's a great negotiating point or point of making your proposal even look better if you can offer to your client or the general contractor some accelerated delivery fees. If you understand their schedule and you know that the long lead time items, you could possibly get accelerated delivery to their site if they need it, and to be able to take that cost into consideration in your bid, and it would help them. And then you just need to take that into account. Taxes, of course, sometimes they're included depending on the project, and sometimes they need to be excluded if they're non-taxable project. But always make sure, if you don't know, you include them, and make sure it's spelled out. Sometimes we get proposals that it just has a line item for tax and it says 0, and we're not sure if it's rolled into the main cost or not. So understanding if those taxes have already been included or not are very important and covered. Then sometimes you'll have projects that have owner direct purchases within the project or the possibility of that. And you may be asked to exclude taxes or to show how much the taxes would be, so the contractor may be able to consider or offer to their client an owner direct purchase where they're able to save the taxes and give them that option.
So Emily, that is, for those who don't know, the owner direct purchases or sales tax savings means that if a public agency or a nonprofit purchases material directly, they are not charged sales tax for that. So often then that item will be pulled out and then a separate purchase order for that directly, which is why that is asked separately for that, because that is the process to save money for clients.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for that additional information on that one. Labor and cost. So one of the things you'll want to take into account is possible escalation in tariffs. You'll want to understand when the project will actually be under construction, and if the contractor that you're submitting your bid to is actually wanting today's pricing, what it costs today, and then they'll consider whether or not escalation may come into effect or tariffs, or if they're wanting you to include those to some certain point. They may say, make sure your bid accounts for us contracting this with you within the next 6 months, and keep that in there. So you want to have good information on whether or not you need to include either one of those and for how long, and then make sure you clarify if that is for today's prices. If escalation tariffs are excluded, you'll want to make sure to clearly state that on your proposal. Wage rates. So some projects have funding requirements or other requirements put onto them where wage rates are certain wage rates like Davis-Bacon are required. So you'll want to make sure you are clear with the contractor if those specific type of labor wage rates are needing to be included, because they may certainly affect your cost when you're putting together your proposal. And then on overhead, fee, and profit, you want to know your true overhead as much as you possibly can. So internally calculate your own cost of overhead, such as insurances, storage fees, administrative expenses, your payroll, all of those items, to make sure they're truly covered when you're calculating your overhead, to make sure you actually have a pure fee or profit that you're getting and that it's covered. That will help reduce your risk and you're putting together your bid and submitting it to them. A great example of this is in the first part of my career, I worked mainly in single family construction, and all of their profit and overhead, they put 18 to 20% on all their projects. Here's our costs, we're gonna put 18 to 20%. Transitioning to commercial world, you see single digit percentage numbers on those. And I had no idea how they could possibly be making any money with only single digit percentages on overhead and fee. And then understanding that most of the time, most commercial general contractors, they truly calculate all of their overhead, and then their fee at the end is true fee, true profit that they're making off of it. Whereas single family construction is taking out at the end of the day, out of that 18 to 20%, their insurances, their payroll, their trucks, their storage fees. And so it's a little bit of a gamble if you don't understand all what those true overhead costs will be if you're taking them out of what you're considering to be your profit. All right, we're going to go, Daryl's going to talk to us about the estimating tools.
So, tools for beginners and ways to scale as your business grows. This is something that's really interesting to me, like specifically getting into software and platforms. I know Emily's very interested in this too, because we oversee the majority of them here at this company. But there are so many tools that we have available to all of us at this point to make our lives easier and make us more productive through the day. So getting into estimating tools specifically, it's like, okay, so what's out there? There's so many different ways that we can create an estimate, but I think the big thing we really want to think about here is specifically, what is the best option for your company? Okay, it's going to depend where you're at right now and where you see yourself going. So we can look into various different options. We have Excel, Costo as an example, but I'll get a little bit more into these specifically as we go on. But a big thing is you really want to understand where you currently are. That's the biggest thing for this decision as you go into it. Some people look at Excel and they think there's no way that you can be successfully using it. You need this program, you need that program. It's really not the case. Sure, some might give you more automation options than others. They might have an extended array of features that you may or may not use. It's crucial that you're able to evaluate what you really need and what you don't, because you could go out and you could bring in a program like Sage Estimating or something, and you might only scratch the surface of what you actually need it to do, and in turn you're just going to be spending money on a program that you're not getting the most out of. So I like to think of it like this. When I started at Kaufman Linn about 11 years ago, we were using Excel. There's nothing wrong with Excel, in all honesty. There really isn't. It's a great program. It's super customizable. You can create your own templates in there based upon the type of project that you're pursuing, the type of estimate that you do. Logos, you can essentially have it set up. You can just print it to PDF. It looks like a great report. Like I said, I used this for a long time. Eventually, we wanted to go with an option that was a bit more standardized. So at that point, we reevaluated where we were at that point, and we began to pursue other options. We went out and viewed, I don't even know how many we viewed at the end of the day, in all honesty. But for our use case, specifically, right, we're a general contractor who subcontracts all of our work. We had a very specific use case and specific requirements for what it was that we were looking for. And I encourage you, as you continue down this road, to start thinking about those things too. Like, what is your use case? What does your pursuits look like? How do you break apart your stuff? Be careful with these things, because as you start to review these and see potential options out there, it's very easy to kind of get caught up on it. Just keep reverting back to like, okay, where are we right now? Where do we want to go? What do we truly need? So, as it says here, like I said, Excel is a great option for a tool. CostOS is what we currently use. Sage, Procore, ProEst. Some of these are more geared towards self-performing, which is why we elected not to use them. But in the future, if you wanted to, there's no reason you can't. Let's say that you focus mostly on remodeling work, right? There's a couple programs out there. They're not listed here, but Build Exact, and I believe the other one's Clear Estimates. They're great for remodel work, site work. B2W. There's a bunch of different things with that too. Electricians. Maybe you want to look into McCormick. It's a wide array of different things out there. So be careful when you go down that road that you don't kind of bite off more than you can chew at that point. Think about what your true needs are and then evaluate and pursue from that point. Getting into PDF and document control. Many options here with this as well. I can't say for sure, but I would assume that in the construction field, probably the biggest ones are Bluebeam and just Adobe Viewer. If you do use Procore, they have a PDF viewer in there, which honestly is great for presentations because you can take notes on it. You can mark up items right on there, resave it, and from there you can actually attach it to RFIs and send it out to the team that it needs to go to. So that's another really good option there. Also, you can think about now you're in a meeting, right? Let's say you're on a Teams meeting, a Zoom call like we do all the time at this point in life. You can have it where it's in these drawings using these programs to view them. You have hyperlinks set up. So let's say that you want to go to a detail on sheet A710. You can click on that link from page A200 and it'll take you right to that page. You can zoom in on the detail, you can annotate it, you can go back. It allows for a very consistent, precise, and effective workflow as you're going through these things. Plus, it's really great for communication. Everything that you've heard previously and from Emily and that you're going to hear throughout this is communication is key. Communication is huge to building these relationships. It instills trust. So if you can have these meetings where you can go into a deep dive, it's going to be very efficient. Next, takeoff software. Takeoffs are, there we go. Thank you. Takeoffs are so important. We need clear and accurate quantities, and it's great to be able to share them when you submit your bid. It shows the work you've done. It shows the thought that goes into this, right? So your takeoffs will not only instill the trust in who you're providing your quote to, but it shows your understanding of it. The more comfortable you can make us, the more likelihood of eventually winning a job are going to be. So a couple options on that is on-screen takeoff. That's what we use. And I think I'd argue to say that's probably the industry standard at that point. Maybe that or PlanSwift are probably up there as well. CostOS. So in multiple estimating platforms, you actually have built-in and integrated takeoff softwares as well. Toggle AI, I know there was a question earlier about AI integration and things like that. So Toggle AI is something that we've recently started to use. It's one of the, how do I put it? I guess machine learning options for generating quantities. Now, with these, if you ever elect to go down this road, keep in mind, as stated previously, don't just hit the button and think it's going to give you exactly what you want. You are going to need to fact check it. And there is, I'll put it like this, the more you fact check it, the more the computer itself will learn, and eventually it'll get better and better and better. Procore.
And stay tuned for the course in June 12th, which is it's Toggle AI that will be...
Toggle's perfect. Oh, I did see them on there earlier. That's perfect. And then the last couple ones I have on here is Procore. You can do some level of takeoff in Procore if you'd like. I think it's just for quick reference. In my opinion, I don't do full takeoff on it, but if you need to, you can. And Bluebeam too. If you're already paying for Bluebeam, you can set your scales and you can do takeoffs in there. Now, digging a little deeper into kind of the takeoff conversation is, what do we do from here, right? And I will say right off the rip, I think the most important aspect of your takeoff is having the scale right. I see this so many times where I'll receive a proposal, our numbers don't align, our quantities are off. Sometimes they're only off by a few, which is normal. I have no problems with that. Sometimes they're drastically off. First thing I say when I call the subcontractor back that proposed the number to me is, hey, pull up your takeoff software. Let's double check the scale real quick. That is like hands down the most important thing. And no matter what program you use, they're all a little bit different. So maybe they have a different default scale set. I don't remember what Bluebeam's is. I think CostOS is might be a quarter inch equals a foot. But we have, excuse me? Okay. Apologize for that. So keep in mind, though, that these scales are all different. And some of the programs, if you set a scale on your first page, it will set that same scale through the remainder of the set. Others, you have to set the scale per page. So just little things like that, right? So please always check your scale, always set your scale on your drawings. Once you do set the scale, double check it. Find a long annotated dimension on the drawings, run a length on it just to make sure that it is correct. I will say, from experience, I've had projects where as we are opening the PDFs, renaming the PDFs, saving them, getting ready to send out for invitations to bid, if a document is provided to us in PDF form, it's already set to a certain page scale. When it's resaved, if that page is not the same size, it will throw off the scale completely. So if you receive a set of documents at 42 by 30 and you open them up, you save them, you like to rename them, however you do for your business, and you resave it as a 36 by 24, a quarter inch scale is not a quarter inch scale anymore. So little things like that, right? Now getting into the programs themselves a little bit more, let's see, I would say that for your conditions, we all work a little bit differently. So biggest thing for your conditions, in my opinion, is find a way to stay organized with them. If you're a flooring subcontractor, you have tile, carpet, LVT, however you have it set up, your baseboards, find a way to organize that in the program you're using to make things run a little bit smoother, okay? Find ways that you can double up. So if you have a area that you're taking a square footage on, you can set a second condition on that same area to give you the perimeter. So now you're doing one takeoff and getting two quantities. You're being more efficient. You're saving time. The only thing about some of these softwares that I would recommend is, since they're all slightly different, take advantage of the internet. Go to YouTube, find some tutorials, find some quick tips. The one we use, On-Screen Takeoff, navigating it can be a little funky, right? So I found out that if you hold shift while you're scroll wheeling, you'll pan left and right. No shift while you're scroll wheeling, up and down, hold control, zoom in and out. There's little things like that can make it much easier. Instead of going up to click a button every time, you can just hit a quick button on your keyboard.
All right, now I'll kind of go through this one. So one of the things you also want to take into consideration is seeing in 3D. Obviously our plans are not, they are 2D, and sometimes you get very extensive plan sets that are 500, 600, 700 pages, and sometimes you get 10 sheets, depending on what you're working on. When I first got into this industry, I worked for a flooring contractor, and I did a lot of tile takeoffs. And tile can be in so many places that you just cannot see on the plan. So you really have to walk yourself through each one of the rooms and each one of the spaces and consider, is there tile below the cabinet? Is there tile on the wall underneath the floating vanity? Is it behind this door when you open it up? Because I don't have that view. Is it on the side walls, side splashes? Is it up underneath the arch of the entryway? Is it in the windowsills? Any views that you can't see. So in addition to what you're seeing in front of you in 2D, make sure you're really visualizing it to try to capture all the spaces that are just not shown to you plainly. All right, so we're going to go into setting up the internal systems, and Daryl's going to continue on with this one now.
So we just spent a little bit of time talking about some of the different software platforms, some of the different ways to control your organizational patterns and so on and so forth, right? So let's say you get in some new documents. Your internal setup is very important here, right? We don't want to waste time. You want to make sure you get the estimator the documents, or maybe you're the estimator, right? Get them organized and you start your process. Remember, it takes time to do the takeoffs. Even if you have an AI generated program like Toggle, you still have to go back, you have to double check it, you have to export it, you need to do your due diligence on there to make sure things are accurate. So make sure that you have time to get in there and begin to work through that process. This can really help your team learn the true scope of the project. As they continue to do their takeoffs, they get to that next level, they're generating questions. At this point, you're probably already having conversations with the general contractor or whomever it was, we'll say, that sent you the invitation to bid, the bid documents. While you're having these conversations, you can talk about these your early findings in the scope of work. You can ping questions back and forth off of each other. It's a good way to start that initial contact. So you've kind of got these things starting to develop. You got the scopes beginning to be organized. Now you need to start thinking about how you want to get it into a position to, at the end, right, through all of this quantification and your process, your scope defining work, you want to figure out how you want to present this to the client. What I recommend, and I'll probably talk about it a little bit more, is kind of a follow the bouncing ball approach. You want to be able to really walk them through. I find it quite difficult, in all honesty, if I get a proposal in and it's one or two sentences, it doesn't really tell me. Like if I get a drywall bid in and it says framing, insulation, drywall, it doesn't really tell me that you know the scope of work, that you've gone through that effort. So try to think of it in terms like, if I want to follow the bouncing ball, what do I need to present to this person? So when you're doing all of that, you've got your quantities, you've got them organized. Think about how you're going to share them. Ask the questions. If your quantities seem funny, if something seems off and you've checked your scale, get on the phone with the point of contact that you have that sent it out. Show them, work through this. And the last thing I'll say about this is your scheduling. Remember, due dates are super important. We're all busy. You probably have a ton of projects on your desk at one time, but make sure that if you're gonna pursue the project, make sure that it fits in your schedule really well, because like I said, dates are super important too.
Then going into the bidding part, kind of like we talked about before on some of the estimating and takeoff tools, there are a lot of software and platforms out there for this as well. Building Connected is the one that we use the most. We find it the most helpful, but there are other ones where you can find plans and invitations to bid for your company. Procore has their own. There's Plan Hub, Builder Trend. There's a lot of them out there and available. And then some companies also have pre-qualifications that they may want you to go through. Some are their own internal. Some of them use a third-party pre-qualification platform as well. Compass is the one that we currently use. We've used Lockton in the past as well. Building Connected has their own internal pre-qualification platform. TradeTap is their module that they have integrated. So there's different places where you can go look for putting your name into the system, finding plan rooms, pulling down plans, and being able to submit bids to builders or general contractors. And the main thing is get in there. I don't know how many of you thought of line dancing to the wobble when I said get in there, but I did. Sorry, that's just me. But anyway, that is important. Get in there. You want to make sure that your information is accurate and it's up to date. A lot of times we're trying to find a subcontractor that does a particular type of work. And if you're not listed in there, you've added on a drywall to your stucco company, and it doesn't show that, we're not going to probably pull you in unless we already know that is a service that you've added. You also want to make sure that your contact information is up to date. Most of these, Building Connected being probably the largest and most popular bidding platform that's used out there, the subcontractor who lists their information. Building Connected is the only one who can go in and update and change their information. So a lot of times we'll get requests from people that says, hey, don't contact this guy anymore. Don't send him information. He's no longer with the company, or he's the president of the company and that's not where invitations go to. It needs to go to this lady in the plan department who coordinates them or receives them, and we can't change that information for you. But one of the great things we do see is sometimes there may be a company that has 20 different contacts listed, and some of them actually put the contact name. It says all invitations go here, or all bids send to this contact. And that's great. We know exactly where it needs to go to. That way you're getting it in a timely manner. It's not going into La La Land or spam in your email, or some person that doesn't unfortunately work for your company anymore. So you want to make sure all that information is up to date. Try to track down all of these different platforms that are available for you and get your information in there. Also, same thing for the pre-qualification platforms, Compass, Lockton, TradeTap. See what the process is to get your company qualified or pre-qualified with those different platforms, because then it's there. Kind of the process that we go through is, we get the bid in and we're looking to see who's going to be possibly submitting a bid on the project. And then we're looking to see who's qualified. And sometimes if you're not in that system already, it can take a little bit of time to get you through it. We always try to provide information and make it very simple to get you through the Compass or whatever process platform it is that's being used through that process to get you qualified. But it's always going to be much better if you're already qualified. It checks that off the list, and then we kind of move on with you into additional questions and qualifications in your bid. So standard operating procedures. This one, Daryl, were you going to speak to this one, or I'm going to start this one off?
We're both going to.
Yeah. So the main thing about your standard operating procedures is you want to make sure that you understand what those are, and then who within your company knows it. So from an organization standpoint, as Daryl has pointed out, there's the estimating, there's the software platforms, organization, document control, your schedule. All that's important for the entire department or company. Okay, once you get the ITB in, where does it go? Who does it go to? How long does it sit in a file? Or how long is it going to take to print out plans or get it into the software system? You need to understand really what that procedure is and make sure that anybody's involved in putting together that bid understands it as well. And that it's best suited for your own company. I've owned my own small businesses before. It was just me, myself, and I, or I've had one or two people working for me. I've worked for a small company that had 5 and grew to 50, and with a company now that's about 200 plus, and all of those operating procedures vary greatly from one to the other. So it's not a one size fits all. You need to come up with what works best for you, and then just make sure everyone knows about it.
Yeah, I would add to this. In my honest opinion, it's like, how do I think of SOPs in terms of how do I allocate resources most effectively? So as Emily said a second ago, right, you get a bid that comes in, what's your first step? So that's kind of the process I would take. Now, on top of everything she just mentioned, I like to think about what's the end of the process look like? What do your final reviews look like? Who needs to, does somebody need to give the okay and check off that this is ready to go? What does that look like for your business, right? I know what mine looks like, but if you don't have something in place already in terms of that, I would start to think about that, right? It just makes things smoother. It begins to standardize the process. You become more efficient, and it starts to run a lot smoother in that regard. So kind of think about it in that aspect too. I know a lot of things, people tend to think of the front of it. It's like, okay, I just got this in. What do I do? How do I become efficient with this process? Think about the tail end too.
Yeah, and then the chain of command, also double checking your work. In addition to who's going to need to review it, you want to make sure that the chain of command, the person who's in charge actually does know the standard operating procedure, but also those underneath, so they're not going to the wrong person, asking for questions or submitting you have somebody doing takeoffs and then someone else kind of putting the price to it or gathering pricing data, they know who to submit their work up the chain as well. All right, spotting red flags and the bids, bid documents. There's a lot to kind of go over here, but we're going to take it piece by piece. So within the documents, most people think of plans. We're getting plans put together. Yes, that is one part, and it's of course the most important. But there is a lot even within those plans. You definitely have to read the fine print. There's a lot of notes, general notes. Sometimes you get 3 pages of notes before you even get to any actual plans on the project. You may find specifications within those plans. Some architects like to put their specs actually within the plan sheets versus a separate manual, so you need to be looking for those. There can be schedules, and by schedules, here we're referring to the listing of the actual light fixtures, tile selections, those types of items that may be found also in the plans. There may be jurisdictions that are listed there that you need to pay attention to that may have different permitting or inspection aspects or requirements. There could be alternates listed within the plans where you may need to be providing a base price and then an alternate as well. Those are things to look for, and other various requirements. You know, does the project state that the whole thing needs to be LEED or a certain gold star energy efficiency that you need to be adhering to when you're putting together your pricing? In addition to the documents, the plan part of the documents, there may be a set of specifications or a manual book, or I don't really call it a manual, but sometimes there's a whole entire book that's a separate set of specs, separate from the plans. Geotechs, if you're building from ground up, or the project is, you should always have a geotech. If you don't have one, if you're not seeing it, ask for one. It's very important, especially, of course, if you're doing anything civil, structural, anything relating to the earth work for the earth or the site itself. Hazardous materials. If there's a building or anything else on site that's going to need to be demoed or even attached to, you want to be looking for a hazardous materials report. Is there asbestos there that you're going to be looking for, or anything else? Responsibility matrix. This gets into, you know, is the client and thus the general contractor looking for all of the window coverings to be included, or is that going to be provided by the client, and so you don't need to worry about? Some clients like to provide their own decorative light fixtures. There's a lot of different things like that you'll want to make sure and look at. Commercial kitchens, sometimes they have someone come in and do the whole thing, and so that may not be part of what you need to put together. Maybe then it's just, you know, if it's a hotel or a multifamily, you're just looking at the appliances that go in the actual units themselves. Logistics, where are you going to park? Is there a logistics plan available? Where are you going to store your materials? Do you need a crane out there? Do they have the availability for you to bring one in? Schedules. A lot of times you'll need to know that information. When is your work going to start? When do you need to have materials to the job site? Is there at least a high level schedule available for you to take that into consideration? Is there E-Verify or other type of enrollments that you need to be providing or looking for in that project that's there? Or is there a sample contract that may be coming out with the invitation to bid that you need to be taking a look at to see if you have any issues and kind of get ahead of the ball on what that contract may possibly look like if you were to win this project? Once you start into actually reviewing the documents, I always suggest starting from a high level. Sometimes I've seen even estimators or subcontractors just dive into the details, and they'll focus on one little thing and then go to the next one. By the time you get to the end, you haven't quite captured the whole thing, or you don't have enough time to get to a part of it. Start at the very top. If you're a concrete contractor, what is this building? Is this, and what is your main scope in it? Is it a 10-story cast in place shell structure where you're going to be doing the whole shell, the entire part? Or is this a 3-story walk up and you're just providing foundations and maybe some site walls? That's a big deal. Know that at first. Kind of go through, flip through the plans, know what your main scope is, and then start working your way down from there and defining your scope a little bit more. Is there a retaining wall in the project? Is there a basement level? Are there stairs that I need to be including in my concrete? And then once you've got a grasp of that, you'll need to start looking to see if all of these documents that we talked about before, do they match each other? Are the specifications calling out one thing and the plans are calling out another? Maybe an RFI that you need to submit to your contractor or ask that question, which is a great point of communication and shows that you're paying attention. Or even within the plan set itself, you may see that an elevation is not matching the floor plan. Look for those things. You'll definitely need to know them when you're considering your bid. And again, it's a great point to get yourself in the door with some verbal communications with the contractor. And if you don't get an answer at the end of the day, you need to make your own best assumption and then definitely qualify what you put in there. If the plan is showing one thing and the elevation is showing another, make sure you clearly state how you priced it and included it. Within the logistics, when you're looking at that, you'll want to make sure you're considering site and building access. How are you getting onto the site? How are you getting into the building and up to wherever you may need to be putting your materials? Do you need a crane, a lift? Are you taking these things up the elevator? Is the elevator going to be available for you at that time? Make sure you're doing a lot of markups, however you're doing it. If you like to print things out, highlight, circle, do it that way. I go through and I just highlight and circle anything that I may have a question about. Then I can come back to it later and really try to understand it better and see if I need to ask somebody a question or make a qualification. Again, this is a great point of communication. Great place for you to ask and talk to your general contractor or your client about the schedule, the logistics, any coordination or RFIs that you may need to be putting in. All right, on that section, do we have any questions we can answer for you? I can't see the chat, so if anybody has one, speak up or someone can tell me.
Nothing is in the chat right now.
Yeah, I don't see anything in there.
Well,
I have a
assuming
question
we're
for you.
Perfectly clear. Go ahead.
All right. It's kind of a tough question to ask because I don't want to go down the wrong track here. But I find that I really need to define my scopes much more than just leaving them to the blueprints and specifications. I find that a lot of contractors don't. I mentioned earlier what you're. Seems like a lot of times the ITB isn't fully read and the details are not followed, and they lose sight of the bid dates and when a particular bid is due and things of that nature. How do you deal with some of the contractors that they give you a price and then you come back to them for maybe a VE item and then they say, well, I made a mistake in my first bid, and now they've changed their whole bid from the first time, and you were anticipating potentially using them, and now you find yourself in a little bit of a vicarious.
Did we lose you?
You may have lost him there. I think he
Really
was going.
back, keep allowing them to change.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're coming from the point of like a general contractor or someone who's accepting a bid, taking a bid and considering it, and you think you're going to go with that person.
Yes.
And they come back and they say,
Yes.
my bid wasn't good, I missed something. That happens.
Yeah. So, you're trying to be fair, and, and sometimes they might be the small business and sometimes they're not. And, you just kind of, answer and say, just read all the paperwork or, ask the question, weeks ago or a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it happens to us.
Yeah, we try to take that. Yeah, there's a lot of details, and we try to cover our bases in a multiple ways. Not only do they have all the plans and the documents to them get their bid, but we also, it's a good idea to put together your own high to moderate level of scope, and we'll put that in Building Connected as a bid form. And it's kind of a checkbox, and they can go through and check off the different scope items that they have in there. And even when we get that, sometimes it happens where somebody will just trying to submit it really quick and they'll just check all the boxes. And we look at their bid and we think, I don't really know if they really had all that. So there's a check mark there, but I'm just not real sure. And so we then go through and we pick up the phone and we call them. We just walk through it and go, we just want to make sure you did see this particular thing or this strange part of the project here, and you have this, and you can give them every, opportunity. It's kind of a triple check system to reduce our own risk. As a GC, then the next level is it goes to operations and they put together a contract and they're doing a quadruple check and they're going through it with them even in more depth and in more detail. And then they're signing a contract to the line. We're going to carry a cost and we may be carrying a particular bidder and we're trying to reduce. That's really the best you can do is reduce your risk as much as humanly possible by triple and even sometimes quadruple checking the scope that they've included in there. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about high-level scopes or more detailed scopes. The best that you can is very helpful. And we do have
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. It's a really good one. We're going to try to get through these other slides pretty quick. We've got kind of half of them still to go, so we're going to
I'd say what's important is we're now at 5:55.
We're going to talk fast. We're really fast. Okay. Writing proposals that win contracts. So in this one, Daryl's going to take point of contact.
Yep. So it's really important in these that you understand who your main point of contact in a project is. Get that name early. Often when an invitation to bid goes out, it'll be in your inbox. There will be a listing of contacts for, who's overseeing what division. If you're a plumber, reach out to whoever's doing 15, but try to stick with that point of contact. If you know somebody else in the company and you try to go over the point of contact for that project or around them, it can really kind of muddy the water at times. If you relay information to the person that information doesn't always get relayed to the estimator properly. So try to think of it in terms of, okay, this is my point of contact, this is who I'm building a relationship with, and work through it in that process with them. Cost and competitiveness. So we talked a little bit in the previous section about the low numbers, right? It's not always the low number that is going to get the job. I like to think of accuracy as being the most important thing, right? So yeah, of course, you want to have a competitive number, but I think beyond that, you need a complete scope. You need to be accurate. From there, we've got the scope part figured out. We can trust your scope. We can see your quantities. We understand your quantities. We know what you're doing. If the number's there, good. If it's not there, we can give you guys feedback over time. Keep bidding projects, right? You will get feedback. Ask for feedback. We'll talk about that later. But that's super helpful information for you guys to determine kind of where you fall in this order. So think about it like that. Experience. Some projects just aren't in your wheelhouse. Think about it if you're a person who remodels single family homes and you decide to put a price together for a middle school. That's out of your wheelhouse, right? There's going to be a learning curve that's involved. I think it's great to explore new projects and get into new sectors and try to diversify what you do, what your company does. That's great. Just be careful when you do that and understand that there is going to be growing pains that are associated with that. Again, if you're going to go down that road to protect yourself, be accurate and be as complete and as accurate as you possibly can be. Take all of that into consideration, okay? Scope of work, be clear. I said earlier that follow the bouncing ball. Think about it like that. In my opinion, tell me what you got, tell me what you don't got. You got your list of qualifications. Those qualifications to me are, heck, man, they might even be more important than the scope is at times. That they really help me understand what you're doing and what you're not doing. Substitutions. I do want to kind of take a little bit of a longer second to speak on this one. Substitutions. If you're going to give me a substitution, or you're going to give any GC or whoever your client is a substitution, try to tell them why. A lot of times it's as simple as the product, like plans and specs, we know they could be made 2 years ago. The products that they're calling for, they could have gone through multiple iterations by then. So you can't buy sometimes what is a spec product. So if you're substituting the new one or whatever the case is, tell us that. Give us the reason for the substitution. Maybe the design team has selected a waterproofing product that works great on horizontal applications, and they're trying to call it for a vertical one, and you know it won't work. You're the expert. Tell me these things. Make sure that information gets in there. That is so important, because we can get that in front of the design team and in front of the client quickly, and usually we can get that resolved and keep it moving. Pre-qualification and bonding. Every GC, in my opinion, has some variation of a pre-qualification and bonding, but they're different. So some are lengthier than others, and some are a lot easier to get through. Do not let that deter you from putting a bid together. There's ways that you can price a project and then continue to stay in touch with their pre-qualification department, their risk manager, whomever that may be, to keep working through that process. It's super important, and I know the way that we do things, and I would expect that most people are probably in a similar boat with their focus on risk mitigation, pre-qualification processes, and what projects need to be bonded and what those bonding requirements are. And then Emily alluded to it a little bit earlier with some scheduling comments and lead time, long lead items. We're in kind of the day and age where procurement can be difficult. If you know the items are going to be hard to get, communicate that up front. Put it in your bid. In the bid forms that Emily was speaking of a minute ago, we have a blank section in there where you just type in long lead items, what's going to be difficult for you to get, and you continue that process. If we know that up front, we can build it into our schedule. Last thing I'll say on this, Emily, is just a quick example is switchgears. Switchgears they take so long to get now. And we know this in advance from so many times recently it becoming a problem. We can tell that to a client and we can try to get that baked in there. Okay, next page. Thank you for that.
Don't cut us off when you stop talking.
I'm trying to talk fast. So, devil in the details. Could not agree more with this statement. I kind of view these things as gotcha items, and it's everybody on this call, it's our job to kind of flush out those gotcha items. And it seems like nowadays every project has some of them. So clearly kind of define your scope of work. Be in contact with the contact you have at the GC or the client or whomever. Give them all that information. Type it in there. How many linear feet of railing you have, how many square feet of sidewalk you have, whatever the case may be. Put that information in there. It's super helpful. It builds trust, and it makes it way easier when we call you to go through the direct questions that we don't have answers to, because we don't have to really talk so much about the takeoff. Compliance. Stick to the plans and specs and less in the instructions to bidders that go out with the bid. It kind of varies. It veers off of that, I'm sorry. Often what we'll do is we'll be looking at a multifamily project. We'll ask for a per plans and spec bid as your base bid. And anything that you see up front in terms of VE, we ask for you to give that as a deductive alternate for us. That way, the VE question we had earlier, we don't have to really go back at a later date because it's already in your mind. You're already thinking about some of these things. And just like I said, just make sure that unless you're instructed otherwise by who you're working with, it's perfect to give those as alternates. Just base bid per plans and specs. Clarity, submission requirements. So now we're kind of getting into what we were talking about previously with how do we make sure that this looks right? So make sure you're on, make sure that your submission looks right. And if something looks funky, just ask. Communication is huge here. That's how we get this one sorted out, right? All of that communication goes back and forth. So remember that all that added communication is going to further build the relationship. So you've got everything ready. You've ran through your process, whatever your SOPs are that we talked about. What are your final reviews? It looks good to you. Does it make sense?
You put everything in the submission. Does the submission looks like it makes sense? Is it clear? All of these things are how I kind of like to handle these things. And I kind of view this as if I take your submission and I give it to somebody who's not even looking at this project, can they start to understand it formally? Is it that clear that somebody doesn't understand my project can look at it and say, oh, I know what the scope is. I know what they're providing. That's perfect. Then last thing is the communication aspect. Follow up. We can have a quick phone call. Quick email to make sure. I'm sorry, Emily. We can have a quick phone call or shoot a quick email to that point of contact that you had earlier, just to be like, hey, I turned my bid in, take a quick look at it. Let me know if you see anything that I need to add. If not, let's set up a team call. Let's go over the scope. There you go, Emily. I'm done.
Great. Sorry, I'm just trying to get up through all the information we can get them.
No, I know.
Best practices in actually packaging and submitting your bid. So first you want to talk about...
Let me interrupt you, Emily. I'm
Yeah,
going to put you 6:05. I'm going to put you on the 5-minute notice.
All right, perfect.
We're not covering anything. What's the high points that this group should need to know with any of this? Because we want to be respectful for 112.
Absolutely. Tell us if it's a no, and why it's a no. We may be able to work through it with you. Use the actual contractor's method. If they send it to you in Building Connected, send it back in Building Connected. Pay attention if it's a sealed bid. That may have different requirements. Include all the documents. We've already talked about that. Helpful hints. Put the bid file with your company's name on it, not ours. We get 5 million a day that say our name. It doesn't help us find it. We don't have time for questions. So we'll go on to the next one. All right. Finding the right balance between competitive pricing and healthy margins. You do want to get a seat table. If you're new to a market, you obviously, or a new contractor, you want to be as competitive as possible so you can start actually building that relationship. You want to meet yourself in the middle. Go low, but not so low that you're actually going to lose money. Give yourself some wiggle room, submit it at the middle, and then you still have room for negotiation with them to show them you're really a team player. We talked about including everything in your cost. Clarify qualifications. We've talked about that. What's included, what's not included. Extremely important. You don't want to be scary low. If you get a bid that's scary low, we question it immediately. They had to have missed something because we asked, does it make sense? And when we say, no, it doesn't make sense, it's scary. If you get a call back from us or any GC and they say, your bid was really low, don't just throw money at it. This is your opportunity to go check your work. You probably missed something or didn't see something or got it a little bit off on the scope or the specs. This is your chance. Go check it. All right. You don't get that call often. Take advantage. Scary high. Then we wonder, was it even thought about? And it might prevent you from getting future invitations. So communicate a lot. If you are low or you are high, let them know why. You may just have more scope in there than they think you do. Explain that. Maybe you can back it out and actually become competitive. You want to find that sweet spot so you can show them what you can do. Don't have time for that. All right, how to analyze your wins and your losses. So follow up. All right, so you're going to follow up at these different points. Did you receive my bid? What's the decision time? Then you're going to start asking, who's the project team that's going to be making the decision, as Professor Heller had spoke about. And then what's the project status? Was it shelved? Are they redesigning it? When should I check back again? 3 months, 2 months, a year? You won. There's actually next steps from that. You want your new point of contact. Usually your estimating team, depending on the size of the company, may not be the one doing the contract. Who's going to be putting the contract together? What's my start date? My schedule look like? What is my contract? And you start going over the terms. Losses. How do we look and why? Very, very important. We will provide you with information on how you looked if you ask for it. And then truly consider that feedback. All right. Don't get discouraged. Try again. You want to get your foot in the door and you're collaborating. Sometimes you'll get invitations for like, hey, this is just a concept level. It's not ready for a hard bid. Take that opportunity. Be the first one to work with the team. Get your foot in the door. If you do that, you're going to get invited back to the next iteration and for the final bid. And you've got you're the first point of contact. That's a great opportunity. I've got 2 or 3 of those I'm working on right now. Be the expert. Provide information. I know a guy. Quick story. So we had a tire that somebody wanted to put in a dog park, cut in half from a tractor on a Caterpillar. Nobody knew how to get that. And the playground guy said, you know what? I have no idea, but I will go buy you a tire. I will cut it in half. And while my guys are out there installing the playground, we'll put it in for you. Great teamwork. We love it. Well, brownie points right there. All right. It's good. We love getting information sometimes on your new products and services. I would just say ask first if they're okay, so we don't get a ton of junk mail. We love even more than that, telling us when you're seeing product price increases, market increases, tariffs, escalations, time delay problems on stuff. That is great information to provide for us. And now we're done. Any other questions?
The topic of important details, could you prepare, let's see, the topic is very interesting. It has important details to cover in a limited time. Can you prepare some material and send it out? So yes, you will be getting a copy of the presentations.
Yes. Certainly.
All right. Thank you very much. Whirlwind, Emily, and Daryl, lots of information. Good stuff. Stephanie, back to you for the Wheel of Fun.
Thank you. And just a quick update. We have an issue with Zoom with the survey. So I'm going to just put the I'm going to put the link there in the chat. So you can try to do it that way. And if not, it will be in the follow-up email tomorrow. So don't worry, you will get that information. So let me go ahead and share my screen for the Wheel of Names. Oops, it's not working fast enough right now. There we go. All right. Albert, are you still in the room with us? If you are, unmute yourself. Going once, going twice. Albert Vallon.
Oh, he's here. Oh. He's here. He's in the chat.
All right, very good. So Albert, I have your email, and we will be sending you a digital e-card of compliments of Kaufman Land. Thank you so much, everybody. Again, that link is in the chat to go ahead and complete the survey. Thank you to our presenters today. It was another amazing session. And join us again next week for SBU 205, where we'll talk about data and using that data to drive our business decisions. So everyone, thank you so much. Jeff, I'll hand it back to you.
All right. Great job, great information, great attendance. Hopefully you learned a lot. This was both good big picture from Professor Keller and great details from Emily and